Hi everyone, happy Friday. Today is day 10 of the job interview masterclass here at Orchid Daily. And we're going to be talking about following up after the in-person interview part of the process. So welcome, happy Friday. If you can hear me, see me okay, please let me know in the chat. Let me know where you're from. Obviously get your questions ready. I'll be answering your questions at the end of today's session. And of course, if I can't, please feel free to message our coaching team. Okay. All right. So let's see who we have here today. We have Robert, Sean, Jared, Tim, Maggie, Denise, David, Suben, Mariana, or Marina, Matthew, James, Ed, Puneet, Gary. Awesome. So many great people here today. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining me. Great. Thanks for letting me know everything is good to go. That's always a positive sign. I'm giving JT a pass today. She's been working really hard this week. She's live streaming nonstop. So I figured I'd take this one solo today. So she'll be back next week though. So I'm really excited about today's session. We kind of went over a lot of the stuff last week in the follow-up session of the phone interview. A lot of it still applies to the in-person interview process. But I did take some of your experiences at this point in the process, and I added them in here, and I really am excited to talk about that today. So if you have any other questions about this part in the process, please get them ready, and I'll be sure to answer them. If not here, then in the direct messages, okay? All right, so what do you say we get started here? Okay. So let me just bring up my slides and everything here. Okay, so obviously before we begin, just a couple of reminders. Make sure that you're RSVPing for sessions to get reminders and notifications when we're going live. I just wanted to mention that we are getting geared up for our next masterclass. We're actually calling it the live trainings from now on. And that's going to be starting on February 10th. And it's going to be all about networking. So stay tuned, check out the events tab for more updates on that shortly. We're going to start scheduling those out. But that way you can at least RSVP for those sessions and you don't have to worry about it until, February. But it's going to be a really great in-depth class. So definitely stay tuned. Obviously, if you can't make a session, that's okay. We'll have a recording and the slides will be available after. And as I always mention, if you don't get your question answered today in our 30-minute session, that's okay too. Just message us in the coaching direct messages and we'll make sure that we get that answered for you, okay? All right. So following up after an in-person interview, obviously, again, we went over a lot of this stuff last week, but I want to go over it again because it's so important in this process. All right, so it doesn't matter if you're at the end of your phone interview, if you're at the end of an in-person interview, if you're at the end of the final interview process, it's very important for you to thank them. And then, of course, follow the follow-up, essentially, schedule that we have laid out for you if they don't end up reaching out to you when they say they do. Okay, this is important because you want to keep touching base because you want to make sure that you're staying informed and understand what is expected of you in this part in the process. But you also want to make sure that you're not going too far and being too pushy because it really can hurt your brand. So there are some techniques that we teach here at Orchid Daily to help you kind of master this part of the process because it is a very crucial part in standing out and being selected ultimately for a job. Okay, so obviously at the end of every interview, make sure that you're asking about next steps, very important. So that way you have some kind of expectation, some kind of timeline from them so you know when to reach out because that could be, if it's coming from them, it could be different than our timeline. But our timeline here is roughly if they don't give you an answer, if you don't hear from them, then if you don't hear from them when they tell you you're going to hear from them. So if they give you some good guidelines, you want to be thinking about that as well. Okay. All right. So obviously within 24 hours of your interview, make sure that you're sending a thank you note. This is one of the most overlooked things in the hiring process. And it's frustrating because it's such a simple thing to do, right? We were always taught growing up to send our thank you notes and say please and thank you. If someone's taking time out of their day, whether it's, in the hiring process or helping you out with something, you want to thank them and show them that you respect them and you appreciate their time. So sending a thank you note is very important. It's going to help you stand out. It's going to show them that you respect them and that you appreciate the time that they took out of their busy day. Okay. It also makes people feel appreciated and heard, I guess. So make sure that you're sending a thank you email within 24 hours of your interview. It's going to help you stand out. It's going to give you a lot of bonus points. And I have to tell you, when we hire here at Work It Daily, this is one of the main factors that we take into account, because if you're sending a thank you note, you get tons of bonus points. We really look for that in the hiring process here, because it shows a lot. It shows a lot about your personality, your professionalism, and it's a nice way to stand out and essentially thank them for their time. Okay, and it's another touch point, right? So why give up this great opportunity to touch base with a simple thank you note? And we do have a template that I have at the end of this session, as well as it's in the cheat sheet as well, so you can check that out. Once you get to this point in the process, okay? So really important. That is probably the most important part of this whole process here, is the thank you note. All right, so 1 week out, if you don't hear from them a week from your interview, then you want to send a follow-up note to them. So wait 1 full week, send them a quick email. We have a template for this as well. But obviously keep it short, polite, stressing that you're still interested in the opportunity and that you're looking forward to hearing more. Again, we do have a template for this, but this is about a week out. All right. And never follow up on a Monday, you guys. I'm sure you've heard us say this multiple times, but Mondays are kind of tough for everybody. You're coming off the weekend, your inbox is full, you're overwhelmed. And the last thing you want to do is handle that extra email that you get asking you for something. So follow up, never follow up on a Monday. Try to do that, Tuesday or Wednesday in the week. Okay. So 1 week out, that's when you follow up. And then if you don't hear back still, you'll wait 2 more weeks. So you're about the 3-week mark from your interview. And again, if you don't hear, if you haven't heard, then you want to send them another note, kind of pinging them and saying, hey, I'm really excited about this opportunity and I'm looking forward to learning more in the process. I understand that you probably have a lot of candidates and I'm just excited to, share any other, experience with you if you need that. So give them another ping 2 weeks later. So that way, you stay top of mind and you're not selling yourself at this point. You're just kind of, again, keeping the conversation going. After that, you want to assume that they've already hired somebody. They might not have, but you want to assume this because it's, if you're going to keep, we call it job crushing. If you keep job crushing on something, an opportunity that you haven't heard from in about a month or so, you're kind of wasting your time. So just assume that this one is on pause and that they hired somebody else for the time being. But that's where you just want to wait a couple of months, check in, see if, that new hire is working out, check in to see if they, ended up hiring anybody at all, if you never heard back from them, and just kind of check in and say, hey, I'm still really interested in learning about this company and participating in what you guys do. If there's any opportunities that are a good fit for my skills and expertise, I'd love to learn more about them. Okay, so as you can see here, you'd be really surprised how many companies actually do go back to those candidates, because you guys have to think about it this way. You've already started a conversation with these, the hiring team and this organization. They know you more than a cold candidate, somebody that they've never talked to, somebody who's just, discovering them. So you can consider yourself kind of vetted. So they're going to be more likely to talk to you if an opportunity presents itself than some random person who applied on Indeed. Okay. So you want to think about this as, if they don't accept you for this first opportunity, no hard feelings. Use it as a way, or rethink about, what this means. It's a networking opportunity at this point, right? So you've started a conversation, it wasn't the right fit. Okay, that's fine. I'll check in again, in a couple months if I'm still looking. You've already had that base conversation with them, so they know more about you than just any other random person on the street. So just kind of rethink that approach and that mindset when you don't hear back from them, because you have a conversation going. It just probably wasn't the right opportunity or right time. Okay, so some other things to keep in mind at this point in the process Always ask about next steps. Obviously, this is an important one. Like, as we mentioned, you want to be proactive and understand exactly what the timeline is going to look like so you can work with them effectively. If they do give you a vague response, it might not be the right opportunity for you, or they just might not know what the next steps are, right? So sometimes, they have a lot of people to hire and they don't know what that timeline is going to look like. Don't take it as an absolute no if they don't give you next steps, but definitely continue your search elsewhere as you follow our follow-up strategy, okay? The next thing is to realize that obviously time goes quicker for those hiring teams. If you don't hear back immediately when they say that you should hear back, take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. For hiring teams, it feels like a week can feel like a minute for them because they have so many people that they're interviewing. They've got on top of their other work. Whereas you're sitting at home waiting to hear back, waiting for the email, waiting for the call. And so that can feel like an eternity to you. So try to take a deep breath if you don't hear back when they tell you that they're going to reach out because it's probably just a simple, they're busy and overwhelmed and the timeline kind of got skewed a little bit. So, don't just pick up the phone the second that they said you should hear back. Give them a little bit of a grace period there. Obviously, you don't want to pester them because this can really hurt your brand at this point in the process. If you come across as aggressive or pushy, even if you're not intending to do that, it can hurt your chances of landing that opportunity, right? So you want to be respectful, give them their space, obviously, get in touch with them, but don't do it so much that they're like, oh my gosh, this person is over eager, a little bit desperate. I'm not sure about this one. Obviously that waiting game is really painful sometimes, but you need to, again, take that deep breath and say, okay, let me think about it from this person's point of view. Okay, they're busy, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed. I need to find a way to keep in touch with them while also making their job easier. Okay, so keep that in mind. And think about it this way, like your brand goes well beyond your LinkedIn profile and your online presence. The way that you talk to somebody, the way that you interact with somebody says a lot about you as a professional. So, when you're overeager and you're emailing them every single day or calling them or, some people even show up to the office, that says volumes about you as a professional. And if it's not really what they're looking for, then they're going to move on with somebody else. Okay. So please keep that in mind. Obviously, thank you notes. They are for thank yous, right? You don't want to use this as an opportunity to sell yourself. A lot of people are tempted to do this because in the interview, after they're obviously going through every single response, every single question, over analyzing it and saying, oh my gosh, I should have said this. I should have highlighted this skill set or this experience in my work history. So it's really easy to say, oh, maybe I'll just put it in, pop it into my thank you note. By the way, I have this experience and I have these skill sets and yada, yada, yada. And this is not the time to do that. Okay. The thank you note is not a place to sell yourself. It's a place to show them that you appreciate their time and that you're looking forward to hearing back. If you do go crazy in your thank you note and it's a novel or you're trying to sell yourself too hard, again, this is a turnoff, right? You're being a little bit pushy, you're being a little bit desperate, even if you're not intending to do that. So a way to avoid this is to ask good questions during the interview, as we've talked about the last couple of weeks. Make sure you do your homework so that way you can really highlight the key things that you need to highlight during the interview, okay? And another way to make sure that you're hitting on everything is to practice, right? A lot of people come to us and they're like, I am so bad at interviewing. I know everything inside and out. I know exactly what I should say, but I get so nervous that I find myself forgetting details or, just not giving them the most specific answers that they're looking for. So a way to combat that is to get in front of a camera, practice, record yourself, focus on delivering, focus on your responses, even, grab a friend or one of our coaches. We do offer that service in addition to our subscription. But, if you can practice, you can get more comfortable with this whole interview process, and you're going to be more confident, and you're going to remember those details. So that way you don't feel like you have to sell yourself in the thank you note because you've already done the work in the interview. Okay. So it's just some things to keep in mind there. Okay. So here's some templates that you can use during this follow-up process. Again, you can download the slides after the session, and we will have these also in the cheat sheet attached to this as well. Okay, so for your thank you note, again, keep it very simple. So this one's just, thank you for the opportunity to interview for the blank position. It was great to chat with you about your organization. I especially enjoyed speaking to you about blank. So this is where you want to, tie in a piece of that conversation that you had with this person. Just because this is important, just side note, because you're going to want to send a thank you note to everybody that you interviewed with, and you don't want it to be the same. So this is where you can make it unique to that person while still keeping it simple. So you can say, I really love talking to you about the, XYZ, yada, yada, and it's specific to that person while still keeping it simple. Okay. So it makes them feel uniquely appreciated, and you're showing them that you were listening, that you were engaged, without going too much into your thank you note. Okay, so that's that. And then after that, you're just saying, I'm very excited about the position. Please let me know if there's anything else I could do to move forward in the hiring process. And I hope to hear from you soon. See how simple and basic that is? And I know it's so tempting to add much more in there, but this is really all you need. And this is really all you should do. Okay. The follow-up email template. So this is 1 week out, 3 weeks out, whenever they told you to follow up. This is essentially what you'll use, a version of this. So this is just kind of our base template. Obviously, you're going to want to tweak it a little bit according to, how many times you need to follow up and so on. But this is essentially just, I hope you're having a great week. I wanted to reach out to you to see if you need anything else from me at this point in the process. I'm very excited about the opportunity to work with your great organization. Is there anything else I can share to help further my candidacy for the blank role? Thank you for your time and consideration. So again, very simple. You're not asking for a lot. You're not making them feel like, wow, you're taking forever, and I just really need you to get back to me. It's very polite. It's showing them that you want to help them out if possible without being pushy. And it's just kind of a simple way to follow up. You can even add a little PS at the bottom, just kind of linking to something relevant that you might have talked about, like an article or a video. This is another way to kind of spice it up without adding too much to that note. Again, you can add a little depth without going overboard in this case. All right. All right. And then the not today template. So if you don't end up earning this opportunity, you do want to still send them a message. You never want to leave them hanging. You went through this process with them. You owe it to them and yourself to kind of tie up loose ends, thank them for their time, and find a way to stay in touch. Okay, because we call this the not today template because when they tell you no, it doesn't mean no, not ever. It means no, not today. This wasn't the right opportunity for you. It wasn't the right time. So don't think of it as this is never going to happen for you. Okay, it just wasn't the right fit this time. So you do want to make sure that you're sending something like this to ask how you can keep in touch. And that way, again, you're reframing this. This isn't, this is turning into a networking conversation now, right? You've already talked with them. You know about the organization. They know about you. You're vetted. You're a warm candidate. This is a great way to show them that you are still, in fact, interested and that you do want to ultimately find a way to earn a role here. Okay, so the template that you can use for this is just, thank you so much for taking the time to work with me during this process. I understand it wasn't a fit this time, but I'm still very interested in your organization. Based on what I've learned, or based on what you've learned about me in this process, is there anything I can do in order to earn a position at your company in the future? Notice that you're not saying, what skills weren't a great fit for me here? Why didn't I earn this opportunity? You're kind of framing it more positively, giving them the opportunity to answer. They probably won't, but it's always, fine to ask in this way. Don't just call them out and say like, why wasn't I fit? Can you tell me that? Because they probably can't tell you that. for some legal reasons. So, you can frame it like this instead. Then you just say, if possible, I'd love to keep in touch. If another opportunity comes up, what's the best way for me to stay on your radar screen for future opportunities? Thanks again for your time, and I wish you the best. So this is just a nice, polite way to tie up those loose ends, show them that you're still invested in this organization, you appreciate the time, and it's going to end this whole process on a very positive note. Okay, if I got this message, I would feel like, wow, this is really a professional person. They're polite, they're respecting our time, they understand where we're coming from, and they want to ultimately find a way to work here. So I'm going to keep them on my file, right? Keep them on my mind. So this is another reason why you want to keep in touch, a couple months down the line, say, hey, how's it going? I'm still thinking about you guys, still interested in potentially finding my way in that organization. What's going on? So they'll remember this. And again, the way you handle a rejection speaks volumes about you as a professional. So again, we're not asking about skill sets that you should have showcased, why you weren't a good fit. They're not going to tell you this, and it just makes things awkward, and they're going to have a kind of a sour taste in their mouth if they see that. So make sure that you're approaching this professionally, politely, even if you feel upset. You don't want to burn this bridge. Again, this has turned into a networking opportunity, so make sure that you're leveraging that. Okay. So we asked you guys, what are some mistakes that you've made at this point in the process? And we got some really great responses that I wanted to share. These are lessons learned during the follow-up process. So Sarah Jane has a really great one here. I love this. Thank you so much for sharing this, Sarah Jane. You always have such great insights here. So Sarah Jane says, I screwed up a thank you note. I'm sure it was before I found Work It Daily, and the template I was following told me to sell myself again in the thank you note. Those were really hard and awkward notes to write, and I got crickets afterwards. In retrospect, I realized that those would have been awkward to receive as well, which is terrible. Thank you notes should generally leave the recipient feeling good, happy, and positive. Essentially, when you're selling yourself, you want to be thinking about, would I want to receive this? Would this make me feel good as a hiring manager? Because as a hiring manager, you know that you're letting people down when you reject them and you say not today. So this isn't going to make them feel good when you're overselling yourself. You're trying to figure out what's going on. You're being a little bit aggressive or pushy, even if that's not the intention. So it's important to look at things from the employer's point of view, like Sarah Jane did here, because you might not realize how you're coming off. And you want to think about, would I want to receive this note? And before you send it, make sure that you read it from their point of view to see that. And we obviously advise you to send a thank you note to everyone you met with, if possible. But if it was only in passing, like, for example, Sarah Jane said that she sent a thank you note to the receptionist as well, which she felt like it was a little bit too much. But if you're only meeting someone in passing, you don't need to send them a thank you note. It's not really necessary. It's more for people that you're actually having a conversation with. So that way it's kind of a good balance of, I'm paying attention, I'm talking with you, but, I'm not reaching out to every single person in the organization saying, thank you. It was so great to go in there and meet with you today. I don't think it's a negative thing necessarily. I don't know if it really can hurt you that much, but if you feel like, oh, this might be uncomfortable, this might be awkward, it probably isn't the right thing to do here. So thanks for that lesson learned, Sarah Jane. Okay, Arwen has a great one. I haven't always hit the timing. To be honest, I try so hard in the prep that I'm typically exhausted and wiped after the interview. I may be 2 or 3 days late in the response. And in that case, I have sent a physical thank you note, which sometimes can be even more delayed given, the office mail. So this is a great one. And I'm so glad you brought this up, Arwen. I love handwritten thank you notes. I love them. I'm a huge card person. I, buy cards and save them for a year in advance just for a certain person, or certain people. I'm really big on the handwritten cards and notes. That said, I would still advise you to send an email within 24 hours of your interview. This is purely for timing, right? You want to make sure that you are staying on top of it. They know that you're staying on top of it, and you didn't forget about the thank you note. It can be difficult sending the handwritten notes, especially when you're trying to reach out to multiple people in the organization. So, with addresses and who do they go to, and what if they don't get there? This adds another layer of complexity, even though it will definitely help you stand out if you can pull it off. But I would definitely advise doing the email version instead. That said, if you can manage to get that thank you note immediately in the mail and in their hands the next day or so, and that's your style, you can go for it. Just make sure that it's timed really well, and it's not 2 or 3 days later. That's the tough thing about snail mail. And again, if you do it well, it can help you stand out. Once we interviewed somebody, and I love this, who sent a thank you note that was customized based on something that we talked about during the interview process. So it's going to sound really odd, but we were somehow talking about Matt Damon during the interview process. And, we were just talking about it and kind of bonding over that. And we got a nice little thank you note in the mail with a card designed with the Matt Damon kind of theme. And we all kind of had a great laugh about that. And obviously I still remember it. So that is a good way to stand out. You just have to make sure that you're thinking about the timing, because if it's too late, it's going to be too late. In that case, it was, unfortunately. So even though it stood out to us and it was really great and we appreciated the thought, it was a little bit late in the process. So you want to be thinking about that. And of course, this is not appropriate for every culture, every company, but we obviously ate this one up. So I just love to tell that story. So if that's kind of your style and you can pull it off, go for it. But rule of thumb, email within 24 hours. All right. Cool. Okay, so Kimberly says, after being rejected for a position that I had interviewed for, but I wasn't the best fit for, I didn't send a follow-up email thanking them for their interest in me and letting them know that I needed, if they needed any help filling another role. So no follow-up here. Obviously this is a good lesson learned. Always thank them. Even if you didn't get the job, always follow up, because there might be an opportunity down the line. You're already in that process. You might as well, keep in touch with them. So don't risk throwing away a potential opportunity because you forgot to thank them. So thanks for sharing that one, Kimberly. Okay, and our last one is from Hillary. It was years ago, but I still cringe when thinking about it. I misspelled the interviewer's name despite being in an earlier email on the thread. There was no excuse. Always triple check your emails before you hit send. I totally agree, and I've done this. Everyone has done this, but it's super frustrating because you could have totally nailed the interview. You could have had a great thank you note, a great follow-up message. But if you have one minor mistake like this, it can actually make a big impact because it's part of your brand. So the lesson learned here is to proofread a few times before sending. And a rule that I have when you are sending emails is write your message first, proofread it, and then add in the email right before you send it. Because I don't know about you guys, but I have had plenty of times when I've accidentally sent a message before I was done writing it, or maybe I didn't proofread it. And this is just a good way to kind of save yourself from that. So thanks for sharing, Hillary. Okay, so that was a ton of information. Hopefully that was helpful. Don't forget to tune in on Monday for day 11. We're going to be talking about the goals of the final interview. So next week is the last week of this masterclass, and we're going to be talking about those final stages of the interview process. So definitely stay tuned. And we've got a question actually in the queue already, and I would love to get to your questions in the chat. But I thought this one was a really good question from Puneet. So Puneet asks, I had a panel interview today for a manager position. The HR mentioned that they have narrowed down to 4 candidates, including myself, and will get back to me after interviewing them. I would really love to secure this job. Should I send the HR manager my recent certifications relevant to the job at hand in order to stand out from the rest of the 3 candidates? Or does this look too salesy at this point in the process because, they're making the final call soon? So Puneet, as we've talked about, it's so tempting to want to sell yourself at this point in the process. And congratulations for getting to the final interview stage. That is awesome. But my answer here would be no, please do not include any sales, kind of messages in your thank you note or in your follow-up. The time to do that was in the interview. So you really essentially just want to thank them for their time, let them know that if they need anything else from you to, shoot you a message. But this is not the time to be adding in any extra, information about your qualifications. That time is past. So at this point, you just have to accept that you've done your best, and you obviously have, because you've made it this far in the process, and that, they'll have faith that they'll be in touch with you if they need anything else or if they want to extend an offer. And obviously this wouldn't be the intention, but if you do this in the follow-up or thank you note, it makes you come across as being a little bit pushy, overeager, desperate. And this is not the type of brand you want to be conveying at this point in the process, especially because you want to be respectful. You want to show them that you're professional and that you understand the dynamics of this process. And when you're being compared to these other top candidates, it's important that you don't come across as overeager or desperate, because that sends a red flag to them. So obviously they've seen that you have potential. That's why you're at this point in the process. You've made it this far for a reason. So don't tempt yourself with adding extra stuff into your thank you note at this point in the process. Okay. But yeah, so, and if it doesn't work out, obviously just use that not today template that we shared to keep those lines of communication open. Just don't sabotage yourself at this point in the process. And who knows, you might be the lucky candidate who earns this opportunity. So, good luck, Puneet, and we're all crossing our fingers for you. Okay. Awesome. All right. So what other questions do we have today? I have time for a few questions. I know that went a little bit long, but let's see. Erica has a great question here. So with the Not Today letter, would you suggest connecting via LinkedIn as a way to keep in touch? Absolutely. I would totally extend an invitation on LinkedIn to the hiring manager or whoever you were talking with in this process as a way to kind of stay on the radar. Great opportunity here. Awesome suggestion, Erica. And what you would say in your invitation note, you definitely want to customize this, but say, it was so great to meet with you during this process, for the, hiring for the XYZ position. I'm still interested in your company. I'd love to stay in touch with you. Would you mind connecting, or, can we connect here? Something like that, something simple. It gives them enough information. So if they were to look you up in their network, they would know exactly how they met you, and so on. So great suggestion, Erica. I love it. Okay, so Dennis has a great question. For the thank you note, how do you address all of the panel interviewees? Often there are people that were not clearly introduced, or should you just send one note to the host? So if you really can't track down everyone's name, everyone's email address, yes, you can send it to the host, whoever's contact information, say, please extend this thank you to everyone that I interviewed with today. I would love to send them all, thank you notes on their own, like from themselves, if you wanted to send me their email addresses or something like that. But just, say, extend my thanks to everybody. I really love talking to you all. And, I look forward to hearing more. So if there's no way that you can get those email addresses, you don't remember their names, you can do that. Obviously it's ideal to get in touch with the rest of them, but if not, this is totally fine too. Okay. Question from Jared. When would it be appropriate to connect with the hiring manager? So great question, Jared. So I would say at this point, you can connect, if you were called in for a phone screen or called in for an in-person interview, whatever they decide to start with, probably the phone screen, you can connect with them at that point and just say, I'm really excited to chat with you about, the XYZ position. Looking forward to hearing more. I'd love to connect here as well. Something like that. Again, so they know who you are, why you're connecting, and so on. But once you kind of have an initial conversation with them, that's when you can connect. Definitely. All right. Let's see. Okay, David has a question. There isn't a downloadable cheat sheet for today's session. Will one be put up after? Yes, David. Right after the session, I will add the slides and the cheat sheet. You can also find the cheat sheet in the rest of the sessions that we had this week. But I've been trying to attach them to every recording just so you have them all, for each session. So awesome. Okay. Question from Puneet. After the panel interviews, how do the decision makers make their final decision? Do they sit down in a boardroom together and look at all the resumes and their notes / follow-up emails, etc.? Great question. So every hiring process is different. Every team is going to be different. Every panel is going to be different. They're probably going to sit down after, once they have everybody, gone through and compare notes and say, this is what we liked about this one. This is why we like this candidate. They'll probably have a little session after they meet with you, depending on their schedule, to just kind of, recap what happened and what they liked and, what they could have seen improved. But it really depends. It depends on their hiring process, their style. But in any case, you really want to, again, focus on that follow-up strategy, the thank you notes, because that can impact their decision. I can tell you right now that the thank you note has impacted, it has, we have chosen candidates over other candidates because of a thank you note or follow-up strategy. So it just gives you those extra bonus points to stand out at this point. Okay. Haning has a question. Do you send a thank you note after the phone screen? Absolutely. You should send a thank you note after every time that you meet with a interviewer. Okay. Every time that someone, spends time getting to know you, asking you questions, bringing you through this process, you should be sending a thank you note, just as a sign of respect and appreciation for their time. Great question. All right. I will take one more question here. Let's see. What do we got? Question, do the candidates who were referred by internal employees or were interviewed have any benefit over other candidates, assuming the candidate did not make it to the last decision or the last round of the interview? So internal candidates do have an advantage because they know the company, they know the organization, they already know how to work with people in that organization. So they do have a benefit. And we actually have a great article on this. I think it's 4 ways to be internal candidates. And essentially what you have to do is think about what their advantages are and, kind of play up your strengths and your unique value adds and how you're going to integrate yourself quickly. But they do have an advantage, not going to lie. But if they liked you enough in the interview process and they thought you had potential, even if this wasn't the right opportunity, they might want you for another one, right? Because, good talent that fits within, certain company culture is hard to find. Right. So if they see potential, it's, again, more important to, follow up and ping them in a couple months, because if they really liked you and they saw potential, they might want to bring you in for another opportunity. So if you can't manage to get past the internal candidates, which it's really hard to do that, then, even more reason to follow up and keep in touch. Great questions. Awesome. Well, I am going to come back up on screen here. Hi, everyone. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I hope that was helpful. Obviously, again, I know there was a ton of questions today. If you didn't get your question answered, please send us a direct message in the coaching chat, and we'll make sure to get those answered for you, okay? I hope this was helpful, and I will see you on Monday. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.